What's up, everybody? Patrick back again. We're back in with our parable series, and I really enjoyed the last format or the new format that I'm doing on these things. So because of that, I've decided to just sort of start over and redo every video I've done on here with the new format because I liked it that much. So because of that, we're gonna go kind of backwards now and go back to the very first, or what I think is the very first parable in Matthew, and that is the parable of the sower. It's a very, very important parable. So we see in Mark, when he goes to his explanation, he says, if you don't understand this parable, how are you going to understand any parable? I'm going to do things just slightly different to what I normally do. I guess with the new format is last time I unpacked it after I read the parable. I'm not going to do that this time. We're going to go right into explanation, mostly because Jesus is sort of already unpacks everything that is represented in this parable when the disciples come to him and they say, hey, what does this mean? As we'll see. So because of that, I'm just going to kind of go line by line through the explanation and just sort of explain, okay, great, what the heck does that mean? What does that look like in today's modern 21st century world? The other thing is this account is accounted for in two other places, and that's Mark and Luke. And I really encourage you to go read all the accounts because there's slight variations in the wording that each account gives that kind of gives a grand picture of what's going on in this parable. And because of that, I'm also going to kind of bounce around to, I might pull things from Luke or I might pull various terms from Mark that I've read just because it creates a general picture. But if you go read them, they're all accounted for there, and it's very beneficial to do that. So, that being said, we are in Matthew 13, and it's at the beginning of 13 where he starts his parable. Well, let's go into it. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on the rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the parable of the sower. And like I said, we're just going to kind of jump right into how Jesus unpacks it. We're not going to take any time to sort of break down what everything means. So, with that, in 10 it goes on, the disciples came to him and asked, why do you speak to the people in parables? He replied, the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom have been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. This is why I speak to them in parables. So from the offset, we see that Jesus intentionally hid the meaning of what he was trying to say to the vast majority of the people. As it's written here, it says like the 12 came to him in private or at another time. We see that Jesus intentionally hid that, and I think the main thing in that is, unfortunately, we have to get out of this mindset that everybody receives the kingdom of heaven. Jesus clearly hid certain secrets for the elect few based on, as we're gonna see here, the nature of their hearts. So that's the first thing. Just move on from there is, though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing but never perceiving. You will be ever seeing but never perceiving. For this people's hearts has become callous. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. This has actually changed slightly from the actual writing of Isaiah, and I think the point Jesus is making is not to say, oh, look, this prophecy is fulfilled because, my time has come now. I think his point in saying this is you know the prophecy of Isaiah where it talks about people not understanding and they're not going to understand and God keeps stuff from them. Well, the people here fulfill this in this time while you're around. Then he goes on to commend them by saying, Blessed are you for your eyes, blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For I tell you the truth, many prophets and righteous men long to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. So he's basically just telling them, you're lucky because I'm here. Lucky you. And I think that's a major point is like, if you can kind of keep in mind that everybody is lucky to have what they have, and I guess unlucky to have what they don't have, it really kind of starts setting your mindset free a little bit. A lot of people had to come before Jesus before anyone heard what Jesus said. The disciples here, they got lucky. Anything good that you have in your life, consider yourself lucky because there are many people out there who don't have necessarily what you have and are just, I guess, unlucky to not have that. And in that mindset alone will be the beginnings of keeping you humble, which is very important as we're about to go on to see. So finally, we're getting to the explanation here. Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears a message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the seed sown along the path. So, off the bat here, let's define what the seed is. I think in it's in Luke, he says the seed is the word of God. So, let's just keep that in mind that the seed is the word of God. Matthew doesn't quite explain that here, so it's good to have that explanation in Luke. What we see here is that along the path is that the word of God gets snatches away from people. The message of the kingdom gets snatched away from people because they have no root. So, I'm sorry, it's not because they have no root, it's just because it gets snatched away. And there's other accounts of this in Mark and Luke that talk about they can't believe or they don't understand it. So I think that's a real key thing. There's just people that the word of God gets given to, and they simply just do not understand it. They either can't believe it or don't understand it. They're what the path looks like. There are going to be people we encounter in life and people in general that just are never going to understand the kingdom due to the nature of their heart. And one thing I will unpack, because I don't know if it's necessarily touched on, it's just sort of assumed here, is the four soils that Jesus is talking about is the nature of someone's heart. It's who you are and when you hear the word of God. It's not something that changes. It's not something that is, I guess, like depending on the situation, you're this soil or that soil. Like it just simply represents the word of God and where you're at the time. I believe your soil can change through cultivation or various discipleship or experiences you have, but ultimately your soil is, your heart is what your heart is. So let's go on to the second explanation. The one who received the seed that fell on rocky places is the man who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since he has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. So the second soil, we see that their biggest problem is they don't have a root. And that's just kind of a phrase that stuck out to me, and I really sort of want to spend some time unpacking is, what does it mean to not have a root? Well, the overarching message of Jesus's ministry, sorry, lost my train of thought there. Yeah, the overarching message there is discipleship. Like when he finally ascends into heaven, at the very end of everything in Matthew says, go and make disciples of all nations. And the question always is, why? Well, discipleship is how you transform yourself to become like Jesus. He spent 3 years, roughly 3.5 years, 24/7 with these 12 disciples, like meeting, having a relationship and doing life with them. I like to say eat, sleeping, and going to the bathroom with them. So it's very important that you have discipleship. So I really believe what's being said about not having any root is you're not involved in any discipleship. And as persecution and testing comes, and okay, you heard this new truth and this new thing, and it's provided a few benefits to your life, and that's great, but then you go and talk about it, and then you go and try and put things to the test maybe, and you just get beat down with it. If you're not in discipleship talking about those things and and growing in those things, saying, well, I did this and this didn't really work, and not, you don't have that kind of relationship to do that with, you're gonna fall away fast, because it's like, screw that, I don't want to be like, I'm tired of getting beat down every time. So I think it's really important, that idea of not having a root is not being connected into discipleship, learning from someone who's already become like Jesus, basically. So let's move on to the third one. The one that received the seed that fell among the thorns is a man who hears a word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. So this person, we see that the word goes in and it sprouts up and it grows, and this is the beginning of a bunch of parables about things that take time and things that take process. The next one is about the weeds, and then it goes on to yeast and these things. The whole idea is that growing the kingdom inside of you and transforming yourself to be like Jesus takes time. It's a process. I mean, just think about the process of seed here. It's got to grow and become a seedling, and then it slowly grows over time before it bears fruit. This person, his heart was good, their heart was good, and able to accept the word of God. But as it grew, as the seed grew and it went through, they cared too much about their job, where they're going to live, maintaining all this stuff, everything that doesn't matter, and it just choked the life out of them. It made them ineffective for the kingdom. So it's very important. I think the majority of people are either rocks or thorns. They hear it at once, and then they don't have root, and they don't continue in discipleship, because the person giving discipleship doesn't necessarily line up with all their beliefs. And then number two is thorns. Like, especially here in America, the majority of people, like, we care so much about materialistic things, and it's not wrong to have things, but when they become your every day, you got to have the next this and the next that, like, it just chokes you out, and it's all stuff that doesn't matter in this life. So let's finally move on to the last soil. But the one who receives the seed that fell on good soil is a man who hears the word and understands it. He produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. And I just want to bounce over to Luke real quick, because he adds a little line in there that I think is super beneficial and helpful for understanding this. Excuse me a minute, I'm using an analog Bible here, so I can't jump right to it. Yes, it's Luke 8:15. He says, "But the seed on good soil stands for those with a noble and good heart, who hear the word, retain it, and by persevering produce a crop." And then we went back to talking about having a root and being in discipleship, and part of why they fell away is that the trials of this life, either in the weeds choked it out, or in the root, it withered away. It had nothing. The one on the rocks, not the root. I'm sorry. So if you have good soil and you have a good heart, you have a heart that has been placed in you by the Lord, that's willing to accept the word of God when it comes to you, and then, as Luke says, by persevering through going through trials, for being, rejected, being told you're wrong, being told that's not right, being told X, Y, and Z, and then continuing in discipleship with someone who's equipped to help you grow in the kingdom. I encourage everybody out there to find somebody who knows more than you, and then spend a year with them, spend 6 months with them, learning and understanding how they do what they do better than you. That was crucial for my own transformation, and how it all happened for me is I put in the time of about 2.5, 3 years now of meeting consistently with who taught me how to be like Jesus. So that good soil is only going to be good soil if God places it in you, and if through experience you've been cultivated enough to receive that. But once you do, you see that it's inevitable that they ultimately produce crop. Some people produce 100 times, some people produce 30 times. But the idea is you're producing fruit. And what is that fruit? Well, I'd say that fruit is, he goes on to say, like, your good deeds, your authentic deeds, but more specifically to this, it's transforming and becoming like Jesus to where you no longer struggle with what you struggled with. And I guess that pretty much unpacks the parable of the sower. Real quick before we go, I just encourage y'all to take some time and maybe examine your own heart and see where might my soil be at. Remember, it's those who have the good soil that are able to receive the word of God. So if there is some reflection that happens and there's a way for you to maybe cultivate that soil a little bit more, get it out of the weeds or get it out of the rocks, or maybe you're even on the path, cultivate that soil. Find ways to cultivate that soil in order to receive the word of God and transform your life. Last thing, there's also a good friend of mine, John. His channel is The Messenger Reveals. He has done a video on um, this particular parable as well. It's really good, and it's just a different perspective. I'm going to link that in the description below, and hopefully he can fill in any blanks that I might have missed on my own perspective of this. So, as always, thank you guys for stopping by and giving me what is now probably 16 or 17 minutes of your time. I appreciate that. And finally, to any who have ears to hear, I pray you be blessed in all that you do. See you later, guys.